So I've got Ken Boyer here from Ohio State University. Um, and Ken, you indicated that you'd like to talk about a 2002 article that you wrote with Marianne Lewis on competitive priorities.
Yeah, great. That's so I wrote an article. The full title is Competitive Priorities, Investigating the Need for Trade-offs in Operations Strategy. And if for those who don't know, Marianne Lewis is dean at University of Cincinnati Lindner College of Business, and her father is actually Stephen Wheelwright. So ops strategy runs in the family.
I did not know that.
It's a small world.
Yeah, it sure is. So yeah, so great. So I read the paper, and you were actually doing at least a few things that were kind of methodologically kind of ahead of the game a little bit. I think you had dual respondents, so that was kind of cool. So so why do you want to replicate this one?
Well, for several reasons. I kind of came of age as an academic in the early to mid 90s, and operations strategy was a very popular topic then. And it seems to have kind of disappeared as a research topic, which I don't completely understand. John Gray wrote an editorial a few years ago for JOM. It's the first chapter in every textbook in ops and supply chains. So the fact that nobody's really looked into it for research, it kind of befuddles me. I think companies have to have an understanding of where they're trying to go, what their priorities are, and how they're going to make decisions. So this is also my most highly cited paper. So people find a way to cite it, but people aren't really doing research in operations strategy. So the first thing I'd like to see replicated is we focused on manufacturing. And so the paper was 20 years ago. We studied 110 companies that used advanced manufacturing technologies through a relationship I had built for my dissertation 6, 7, 8 years prior to that. And great. So we found trade-offs. But what about for service companies? So much of the world is service-based now. And as far as I know, nobody's done a similar study. Well, there have been similar studies, but I'd like to see it replicated for more service businesses, for hotels, for restaurants, for healthcare, for consulting.
Do you think if we did it again in manufacturing, we'd find something different 20 years later?
I think you'd find nuances because things are always changing. There's also been a lot of talk and debate across the world about where is the right home for manufacturing. So a lot of people point to the fact that we've offshored so much manufacturing as that being a financial risk, and certainly COVID and the pandemic have illustrated some of the risks of having very long supply chains. So yeah, I think it would be very interesting to look at manufacturing in 2021 or going forward, particularly in developed countries where the manufacturing we've retained is there for strategic reasons, either to be closer to the customer or because it's high value added pharmaceuticals. But as many people have seen with COVID, much of the pharmaceutical manufacturing is not done in the US. The development may be done here, but India is a center of development. So I think it would be interesting to do the study in manufacturing firms and maybe compare different parts of the region, different parts of the world.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What would you change methodologically if you were going to do the survey again?
Well, so there's one thing that I've always, I don't know what the right word is, been a little nervous about. So so Mark Pagel and I had written a paper in the late 1990s where we said, okay, how do we get better data from doing surveys and so on? And one of the things we advocated is asking people when they say what their priorities are. I asked Tom Gadiger and I say, you've got 100 points and you have to make choices and say, okay, cost is important, but I'm going to put 30 points on cost and 20 on delivery. So Mark Pagel and I advocated that, but in this study, Marianne and I didn't do that. What we did is we did a survey and we just asked people, rate how important these are. And there's a tendency when you ask people, you know, the ugliest person in the world still thinks they're a 5.5 or a 6. Sorry, that's a bad analogy.
I think I'm a 7. So
everybody thinks they're smarter, prettier, more handsome than they are, or at least hopes. And when we do primary data collection, people tend to edge things towards positive. So anyway, what we did in this paper is we forced a transformation. We essentially computed the average for each company, and we adjusted the importance of cost, quality, flexibility, and delivery. And there's one figure in there where it very clearly shows a trade-off between cost and delivery. Okay, I think methodologically we were okay. And nobody has ever called us out on it. And please don't do it now because it's 21 years later that water's well under the bridge. But I'd like to see somebody do a study where they just kind of ask people, hey, you got 100 points to allocate across these.
Yeah.
And when I teach ops strategy, and I've taught it for 25 years, I routinely say, okay, rate your company. Now do it with 100 points. And now you have to make choices. And so I've always wondered how that would look different. And when I teach in class, usually those differences start to come up and people start to realize, okay, yeah, I may say cost, quality, flexibility are all important, but there really are differences.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. What if somebody was going to do this study? I don't know if you're going to do it, but you know, somebody may decide to take another crack at it, either with services or manufacturing. Is there other advice that you would give them, or other directions that you would kind of point them in besides what we talked about?
Well, I think Tom, you referred earlier to we use 2 respondents. So in kind of the age of survey as the primary data gathering mechanism in our field in ops and supply chain is kind of dead.
Right.
However, what I'd say to emerging researchers is there's still a need to get people's opinions and their gut about what they're doing within a company. I've never gone into a company where Tom Gadiger, Marianne Lewis, and Ken Boyer all see everything exactly the same. Okay. And so I'd love to see more research that uses 2 or more respondents within a company and brings them together to see if there's strategic consensus.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Another topic I've written on, because a company is made up of many individuals who are trying to pull a boat together. And we've all, you know, we've all used that analogy where people are doing different things, too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Right.
So I'd love to see somebody do something where they're collecting multiple opinions about strategy, whether it's a case study, whether you're mining text comments or something. There have to be some creative new ways that have developed since I lost my hair that you could collect this data. But at the end of the day, I teach at Fisher, Ohio State. We have some seals in our different buildings that are artistically put there. And one of my favorite ones is in one of our main office buildings. It says trade is a social act. And, you know, I encourage researchers to say, let's go back to some primary data and find out, okay, how do we get these people within a company trying to pull the boat together instead of being 8 individuals doing their own thing?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's nothing wrong with survey data. We just have to understand what surveys are measuring, right? And a big part of it is people's perceptions.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And the alignment between those perceptions is definitely worth understanding. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about the paper, raise some interesting points. The point about the textbooks is is definitely well founded, I think.